Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve Peterson and we're back here in the garage. I'm excited because I'm rounding the final corner here with the fix and flip build as far as getting everything reassembled and put back together. I'm hoping to be back on the ground and be able to do my first start on this car by the end of this weekend. Basically, I'm ready for the final steps. I've got the intake manifold here to install. I've got the valve cover here to install. I've got the turbo inlet pipe and throttle body still to install. I want to go through and clean all of these items before I just put them back on the engine. And I'm going to show you in close why on each of these items I want to clean this stuff as best I can before I put them back on the engine. And I have new gaskets for all of this, meaning I'm going to be replacing the intake manifold gasket here. I'm replacing the throttle body gasket here. I replace all of the gaskets and seals while I have all this stuff apart, because the last thing I want to do is rip things back apart and try to chase down a vacuum leak or a boost leak because I didn't replace a seal or a cheap gasket. With that being said, I've got basically the cams back in. We got the timing cover back on. I got my upper engine mount back on, so the engine is now fully supported back on its original engine mounts. I got my jack pulled out from underneath. I've got my coolant housing here on the side of the engine where the coolant temp sensor is. That is all reinstalled with a new gasket as well. The turbo is back in. All the coolant lines for the turbo are connected back in. The oil feed and oil return line are also connected back in. Everything down there is tight. I've got the downpipe connected back onto the turbo. I've got all my upper coolant hoses in the back of the engine all reattached and placed back where they go. With that being said, I'm going to get you in close here. I want to show you why you don't want to just throw this intake manifold back on the car after removing it, especially after the damage that was done on this engine. While I'm in here and hoses are where they are and I still have all the factory hoses hooked up to the manifold, I'm going to show you the coolant bypass mod again. I've mentioned it in my previous videos, but I'm going to talk about it again in this one. Hopefully it helps some people out with the installation and removal of the manifold. It makes things so much easier. If you do ever have to pull this back off, if you've done the coolant bypass mod, you don't have to deal with draining coolant and stuff like that anymore. So we're going to dive into that in this video. I'm going to show you my cleaning process to get all of the oil stains out of this valve cover. This valve cover is going to be brand new when I'm done. So here we are in close now. I just wanted to show you again real quick just some of the things that I did after I got the cams in. So installed the cams, installed the timing chain and tensioner and guides, and got the timing cover placed back on. Once I got the timing cover back on, I was then able to put the upper engine mount back on, and also the alternator bracket, the tensioner bracket. One of those bolts does go through and it holds this top corner of the timing cover to the block, so it's kind of important to get this bracket on as soon as you can as well. I am ready for the intake manifold to go back on. I did get the turbo back in. Get some light maybe. So turbo is back in. O2 sensors are all strung up where they need to go. I got the two rear coolant hoses there from the firewall or from the heater core to the to this. I don't really know what you call it. I guess it's the coolant temp housing, but it's like the elbow where everything kind of splits. So I've got the two small, the feed and return coolant lines that run to the turbo are connected up. I've got those two larger hoses that run to the heater core are connected up. Everything that's kind of laying over here will go back once I get the intake manifold and valve cover back on. I am basically ready to put that upper coolant hose, this guy right here, back in. This holds the housing for the fill and then the line that runs over to the coolant, the overflow reservoir. So all that can go back in. But before I do all of that, we want to clean some stuff. So first thing is the underside of the valve cover. That is really gross. You can see how crusty the burnt oil is. This is what happens when you run your engine past oil change intervals and you run your engine low on oil, it starts burning and it turns into this crispy brown chunky stuff that sticks to everything, and it gets really sludgy, and this stuff clogs filters and oil passages and starves engines for oil. And this is a huge reason why our engines fail. Because people think they can go 7,000, 8,000 miles, 10,000 miles on oil changes, and because that's what the factory, that GM vehicles go like 7,500 mile oil change intervals, which is insane to think that they're willing to push their engines that far when oil is doing this inside your engine. So we're gonna clean all this up. I have a process to clean all this up. I'm gonna show you that. I want to show you here the throttle body. Look at all that grossness in there. We're going to clean all that out of there. That stuff, again, will mess with airflow. It messes with your throttle body. If that stuff builds up over time, your throttle body will start sticking and won't idle properly. It won't run properly. The intake tube for the turbo, I want to point out there is a little bit of oil residue. I'm actually surprised there's not more, but I'm going to flush that out just to make sure there's nothing bad in there. Then we get over here to the intake manifold, and this is why. So look at that. That is chunks of metal. I am currently looking in the throttle body side of the intake manifold that came off of this engine, and I want you to see all of the, if it'll stay focused, I want you to see all of the oil residue that is in there, all of the chunks of carbon buildup that are stuck on the oil residue and everything inside here. You do not want all of this stuff blowing right into your car on the first startup. So I'm going to clean all this stuff out of here. I'm going to flush this manifold out. I got to disconnect all the hoses on here. I'm going to take all the hoses, all the gaskets. I'm going to take the vacuum little filter off of there, or the vacuum check valve, the lines. Take everything off of this intake manifold. I'm going to take the sensor here out and flush this intake manifold. That is the perfect reason why I say that you don't want to just throw some of these parts back on the engine after you've had things like broken valves or other issues internally. You will get metal shavings and chunks of carbon and all kinds of stuff blown through the intake, the throttle body. Technically, I should remove the intercooler and flush the intercooler as well. But this is just some of the stuff that you want to do before you reassemble or while you're reassembling your engine. Look at this stuff, because this stuff could be severely damaging to the fresh valve job and the valve seals and things that I just put together. Here we go. I'm going to show you my process here on cleaning the valve cover up and cleaning these other parts up. I've got my plastic tote. The valve cover fits nicely down in the tote here, so I'm not going to make a super big mess. And my secret to cleaning the valve cover, or cleaning all these oil stains off, is this stuff right here. Dissolves grease, super easy, super fast. Literally just spray it on, wait a couple minutes, spray it again, wait a couple minutes, and it basically just melts all of this off of here. For the tougher stuck-on places, I just use old junk toothbrushes to agitate. Sometimes I get like a detail brush, depending on the part that I'm cleaning, but this will be brand new. Basically the same process I did for the timing cover when I had that off. I did the same thing. And then I also cleaned some of these other parts down the best I could. Okay, coolant bypass mod. Okay, that involves the coolant lines that run in and out of this throttle body, which are virtually pointless. It literally just runs into the corner of the throttle body and then runs back out. It doesn't go into the throttle body in any way. I don't understand the point of it, but basically we're bypassing the split here for the coolant lines, And then on the underside of the manifold, we are bypassing this right here. Same thing. It just runs in and then runs out of the bottom of the intake manifold for no reason. It doesn't split into the manifold in any way. There's no passages, there's no tunnels, nothing like that. It's literally just a metal insert and a metal insert, and it just elbows inside the plastic here. So one line connects and one line connects. So what we want to do to perform the coolant bypass mod and make this the easiest you could possibly think about. Let me get the flashlight here. See if I can hold all of this together. Okay, so what we want to do is there's this coolant line right here, the one that goes to the oil cooler housing. This other end right here is what connects right here on the underside of the intake manifold. Okay, so when we have that disconnected, what you want to do is either replace, ideally you want to replace this hose. Okay, you want to go from the oil cooler housing down here, right down here, up to this hose right here. This guy right here. And this guy, if you can see, goes right into the coolant housing where the coolant temp sensor is. So what you want to do is you want to take a piece of hose, 3/8 hose, and go from the coolant housing here, put a new clamp on there, go from the coolant housing here straight down to the oil cooler housing. Right down there. Oil cooler housing. So right to the oil cooler housing, straight to the coolant temp housing. Bypass the split for the intake manifold and bypass the split for the throttle body. And by doing that, now you don't have to drain the coolant if you want to remove the intake manifold on this car. And that makes things so much easier to work on. Now I can get to my NOx sensor, I can get to my starter, I can get to my coolant temp housing, or my thermostat housing, I can get to my injector rail, my injectors, all of that. All I have to do is take the intake manifold off now, and I don't have to fight with all the coolant lines attached to it. So I hope that helps some people. So before I can clean the valve cover here and get all of this gunk out of here, I need to remove all the gaskets. I want to remove the cap, the sensors, the PCV valve. I can leave some of the bolts in. I'm not really worried about those. I like keeping some of the bolts in just so like I don't get crap down in the bolt holes specifically. I don't obviously want that to happen. So I'm going to leave like those two bolts in, but all the gaskets are going to pull out here and pull all the sensors out. So valve cover gaskets just come out like so. You can tell how brittle that gasket is by the fact that it's just breaking. It's not even rubber anymore. It's turned into like a hardened plastic. Valve cover gasket's gone. Don't forget the other little VVT solenoid housing gasket. That's jumped too. On the other side, we're going to remove the oil cap. And I'm going to zip out all the bolts of the sensors here. We've got the cam sensor for the exhaust side, the cam sensor for the intake side. They are the same sensor. PCV valve. Oh, that looks like a 12, maybe 14 on PCV valve. Surprisingly, that PCV valve is not clogged, but it doesn't sound too good. We're going to replace that. Okay, I've got everything stripped off of this valve cover. I am now ready to clean it. To clean it, the best product that I have found is this purple clean, or this super clean, this purple degreaser. This stuff is awesome. Basically, we're just going to spray it on, let it soak for a minute or two, and then agitate it. In the tighter areas, I just use old junk toothbrushes. In the larger areas, a brush like so, or a detailing brush of some sort, just to agitate the cleaner. But you will see as soon as I spray this on, this stuff just kind of melts melts the oil stains right off the valve cover. Basically, I'm just going to soak all the areas. Let it sit for a second or two, but you will see, even without letting it sit, boom, you can see just like that. I'm just going to clean this section so you can see how well it works. Again, I didn't even wait for this to soak in. This is just me immediately scrubbing on it. There you go. So you can see how well that section cleaned up just right there with this product. Again, if you just kind of soak it, spray it in there and let it soak, and then hit it with a toothbrush or detail brush, you can really clean the valve cover up and get stains out of the timing cover, valve cover, things like that. You do want to wear gloves when you're using that degreaser. Especially when you get into it. Just some like latex gloves or rubber gloves would be ideal. That stuff can do some damage to your skin. Maybe a respirator, because the stuff is difficult to breathe around when it gets up into the air. It's probably not very healthy to be inhaling. So just think about your safety when working with some of these cleaners and products. Also, working outside definitely helps, or working with a fan to kind of ventilate the area is important. But I'm going to use this product on both sides of this valve cover. I'm going to scrub all the nooks and crannies and degrease it completely. Once it is cleaned, I will take my hose and hose it down, rinse it all off, probably rinse it probably 4 or 5 times. You want all the soap and degreaser rinsed and washed out of it. But you can see, literally, it just melts that cleaner right off, or melts that oil right off. Okay, valve cover completely cleaned up really well. All that gunk and nasty cruddy burnt oil is gone and removed, brand new. I took some throttle body cleaner and cleaned up all of the carbon buildup and gunk here in the throttle body. Everything's nice and clean now in there. I cleaned the intake manifold that I had. This is a spare one. I didn't want to waste time flushing out and cleaning the other one. This one has already been cleaned up. I switched over some hoses to this one. We got new valve or throttle body gasket, new intake manifold gasket installed here. I have the VVT solenoid housing gasket and valve cover gasket. We can throw those in. Okay, ready to install the valve cover. I have new valve cover gasket on here. I have my RTV in the 2 locations on the gasket. That RTV is to seal where the timing cover and the head and the valve cover all meet. So those 2 spots will line up right here and back here where the timing chain mark or timing chain kind of is. Again, where those cases meet. There are 4 long bolts that run through the center of the valve cover, and then a bunch of small ones that run around the outside. When you torque these down, just torque them to 10 newton meters. They are small bolts going into an aluminum head, so you don't have to over torque them. You're going to torque in kind of a crisscross pattern starting from the inside. So I like to do the inside 4, get those kind of snug, and then crisscross back and forth from the front to the back all the way around the outside of that cover. And then finally we'll do the 2 that go into the VVT solenoid housing. So with that being said, I got new gasket on here, I got the RTV on here, I got everything kind of out of the way. We are ready to put the cover on and drop the bolts in. I did put all the sensors back in. Okay guys, back together. Valve cover back on, intake manifold back on. All of the wiring harness is plugged back in. All of the sensors and everything is plugged back in. I've got the intake back on, battery back in. I did not film installing the intake manifold and the alternator and some of those things, just because I felt like if you got this far in this project and process, you were able to remove those, then you're probably able to reinstall those. It is pretty straightforward. It's just the 12 millimeters on the intake manifold. Do not over tighten those or over torque those. There's just the 4 bolts that hold the throttle body onto the intake manifold, so that's pretty straightforward as well. Make sure that you replace the throttle body gasket and intake manifold gaskets. We covered that earlier in the video. I've got all my coolant lines hooked back up. The system is filled back up with coolant. I have burped the system, meaning I've got all the air out of the system. If you are not familiar with that, do a little research. Make sure that you get all the air out of your coolant system. Otherwise, things won't work properly. I have new oil in. Everything, again, is hooked back up, and we're ready to go. So far, everything's been good. Before I took it for a drive, I did idle it here in the garage. Again, while I was getting the air out of the coolant system, I was monitoring all of the hoses and connections for any leaks that I may have missed. There was one coolant leak for one of the hoses in the back. One of the hoses I didn't get pressed all the way on, and I didn't have the clamp sitting perfectly right, so it was dripping just a little bit. That was an easy fix. I readjusted that clamp and pushed the hose on the rest of the way, and we are good to go. Some of you may be looking here and going, what is that red plug on there? Well, I disconnected this hose here. That is the recirculation hose from the factory blow-off valve on top of the intercooler. This hose basically just dumps your blow-off valve air back into the intake. By disconnecting this hose and just putting a cap here on the intake, I have created some quote-unquote fake blow-off valve sounds. Basically, that air is getting dumped out of this hose instead of being recirculated back in the intake, creating a blow-off valve, essentially. I have a stock one on here. I don't plan on modifying this car much. I just wanted to hear how it sounded with this modification done. This is a quick and easy way to give your car a blow-off sound without having a blow-off valve. Doesn't really hurt anything. Other than that, the car is bone stock. I did take it for a drive, and I notice it needs brakes. I probably will rob the brakes off of one of the other Velosters I have. It needs struts and strut mounts. These strut mounts are blown out. You can see right there. So the car does ride a little crappy right now. We're going to get some new suspension on here and get brakes on here. I will also be giving it a full detail inside and out. The paint is rather swirly and beat up. It was a Wisconsin car, so it's been through some winters. You can see this paint is pretty crappy looking. So it'll get a full detail, buff, polish, as much as I possibly can, get all of the scratches and swirls out of it. Well, there it is, guys. First drive was to the car wash and to grab some gas. It's alive, ready to go.